a tiny surprise. Look, Kirsty, there really is a pot of gold. You could just be a cooking pot, Rachel said doubtfully. Some campers might have left it behind, but Kirsty shook her head. I don't think so, she said. It looks really old. Rachel stared at the pot. It was sitting on the grass upside down. Let's have a closer look, said Kirsty. She ran into the pot and tried to turn it over. Oh, it's heavy, she gasped. She tried again, but the pot still didn't move. Rachel rushed to help her. They both pushed and pushed the pot. This time it moved, but just a little. Let's try again, said Kirsty. Are you ready, Rachel? Tap, tap, tap. Rachel and Kirsty stared at each other. What was that, Rachel gasped. I don't know, whispered Kirsty. Tap, tap. There it is again, Kirsty said. She looked down at the pot laying on the grass. You know what? I think it's coming from inside the pot. Rachel's eyes opened wide. Are you sure, She bent down and put her ear to the pot. Tap, tap. Then to her amazement, Rachel heard a tiny voice. Help, it called. Help me. Rachel grabbed Kirsty's arm. Did you hear that? She said quickly. Kirsty nodded. Quick, she said. We have to turn this pot over somehow. Rachel and Kirsty pushed as hard as they could. It began to rock from side to side on the grass. We're almost there, Rachel cried. Keep pushing, Kirsty. The girls pushed with all their might. Suddenly the pot turned over and rolled onto its side. Rachel and Kirsty were taken by surprise. They both lost their balance and landed on the grass with a thump. Look, Kirsty whispered, breathing hard. A small shower of sparkling red dust had flown out of the pot. Rachel and Kirsty gasped with surprise. The dust hung in the air above them, and there, right in the middle of the glittering cloud, was a tiny girl. Rachel and Kirsty watched in wonder as the tiny girl fluttered in the sunlight. Her delighted wings sparkled with all the colors of the rainbow. Oh, Rachel, Kirsty whispered, it's a fairy. Fairy magic. The fairy flew over to Rachel and Kirsty's head. The short, silky dress was the color of ripe strawberries, red crystal earrings, and glowed in her ears. Her golden hair was braided with tiny red roses, and she wore crimson slippers on her little feet. The fairy waved her scarlet wand and shot sparkling red fairy dust. Floated softly down to the ground where the dust, all kinds of red flowers appeared with a pop. Rachel and Kirsty watched and admitted this truly was a fairy. This is like a dream, Rachel said. I always believed in fairies, Kirsty whispered back. But I always believed in fairies, Kirsty whispered back. But I never thought that I'd see one. The fairy flew towards them. Oh, thank you so much, she called in a tiny voice. I'm free at last. She glided down and landed on Kirsty's hand. Kirsty gasped. The fairy felt lighter and softer than a butterfly. It was being to think I never get out of the puffer, the fairy said. Kirsty wanted to ask the fairy so many things, but they didn't know where to start. Tell me your names. Tell me your names, quickly the fairy said. She fluttered on the air again. So there's so much to do, then we must get started right away. Rachel wondered what the fairy meant. I'm Rachel, she said, and I'm Kirsty, said Kirsty. But who are you? I'm Ruby. I'm Red Ruby Fairy, but you can call me Ruby. The fairy replied. Ruby, Kirsty breathed. A rainbow fairy. She and Rachel stared at each other in excitement. This really was magic. Yes, said Ruby, and I have 6 sisters, Amber, Sunny, Fern, Sky, Inky, and Heather. One for each of the color of the rainbow. You see? What do rainbow fairies do? She asked. Ruby flew over and landed lightly Rachel's hand. It's our job to put the different colors into fairyland, she exclaimed. So why you shut up inside that old pot, she asked. And where are your sisters, Kirsty added. Ruby's golden wings drooped. Her eyes filled with tiny, sparkling tears. I don't know, she said. Something trouble had happened, and we really need your help. Fairies in danger. Kirsty stared down at Ruby sitting sadly on Rachel's hand. Of course we will help you, she said. Just tell us how. Asked Rachel. Ruby wiped her tears from her eyes. Thank you, she said. But first I must show you the terrible things that has Mountain, follow me and quickly you can. She flew into the air with her wings shimmering in the sunshine. Kirsty and Rachel and Kirsty followed Ruby across the clearing. The fairy danced ahead of them, glowing like a crystal flame. She stopped at a small pond under a weeping willow tree. Look, I can show you what happened yesterday, she said. Ruby flew to the pond and scattered another shower of sparkling dust in her wand. Red. All at once the water lit up with a strange silver light, bubbled and fizzed, and then became still. With wide eyes, Rachel and Kirsty watched as a picture appeared in the water. It was like looking through a window into another land. Oh, Rachel, look, said Kirsty. A river of brightening blue ran swiftly past hills of the greenest green scattered. You know, I have up to the sports fairies, guys. The hillsides were red and white textile houses, and on the top, the highest hill, stood a silver palace, 4 pink towers. The towers were so high their pines were almost hidden by the fluffy white clouds and floated past. Hundreds of fairies were making their way towards the palace. Some were walking or flying. Rachel and Kirsty could see goblins, elves, and pixies too. Everyone seemed very excited. Yesterday was the day of the Fairyland Midsummer Ball, Ruby explained. She flew over to the pond and pointed her wand spot in the middle of the scene. There I am with my rainbow sisters. Rachel and Kirsty and Rachel looked closely at where Ruby was pointing. They saw 7 fairies, each dressed prettily in whatever rainbow color were. They flew and left a trail of fairy dust behind in the Midsummer Ball. Very special, Ruby went on, and my sisters and I are always in charge of sending out invitations. The front doors of the palace slowly opened to the sound of a twinkling music. Here comes Queen Oberon and Queen Titania, said Ruby. The fairy king and queen, they are about to begin the ball. Kirsty and Rachel watched as the king and queen stepped through the doors. The king wore a splendid golden coat and crown. His queen wore a silver dress and a tiara that sparkled with diamonds. Everyone cheered loudly. After a while, the king sighed for a quiet. Fairies and friends, he began. We are very glad to see you all here. Welcome to the Midsummer Ball. And these are the rainbow fairies, just so you know. Friends, he began. Very glad to see you. Summer Ball. The fairies cheered and clapped their hands and cheered again. A band of green frogs and purple suits started to play their instruments. dancing began. Suddenly, a great mist filled the room. Kirsty and Rachel launched in alarm as all the fairies started to shiver. Then a loud, chilly voice shouted out, "Stop that music!" The band fell silent. Everyone looked scared. A tall, boingy figure was pushed his way through the crowd. He was dressed in white, and there were tiny icicles on his white hair and beard, but his face was red and angry. "Who's that?" Rachel asked with a shiver. Ice had begun to form around the edge of the pond. "It's Jack Frost," said Ruby. She shivered too. It's the watery picture Jack Frost glared at the 7 rainbow fairies. "Why wasn't I invited to the midsummer ball?" he said coldly. The rainbow fairies gasped in horror. Ruby looked up and smiled suddenly at Kirsty. "Yes, we forgot to invite Jack Frost," she said, and looked back at the pond. Watched as the Fairy King stepped forward. "You are more than welcome," Jack Frost said. Please stay and enjoy the ball." But Jack Frost looked even more angry. "Too late," he hissed. "You forgot to invite me." He turned and pointed an icy finger at the rainbow fairies. "You will not forget this," he went on. "My spell will banish the rainbow fairies to the 7 corners of the human world. This day on, Fairyland will be out color forever." Jack Frost's spell. As